All right, guys, welcome to episode number 69 of the Conquer Me podcast. This one is going to be short and sweet. I want to talk to you guys about some topics that we've been covering inside of our coaching group. Right now, we're running a Conquer Me coaching group, and we've got a group of folks in there, and we're all going through similar things, and I'm taking them through some processes to help them create more awareness, right? Phase one of the program is all about creating awareness because we only know what we know, right? And there's a lot of things that we don't know. And if we knew those things, it would allow us to have a different outcome. And so my goal is just to help them create awareness around these certain things by doing some audits. So we've been auditing our thoughts. We've been auditing our words. We've been auditing our movement. We've been auditing our dietary habits. We've been auditing our calendars. There's some kind of pillars that I say that if we can audit and create a higher level of awareness around these certain things, then we could have some different outcomes, right? These are our limits. Our limits are how well we're showing up in these different areas, and most of us don't even know because we've never audited. We've never taken the time to really analyze and go, okay, well, how am I showing up in my thinking? Am I thinking positively, or do I have all these negative thoughts? How am I showing up with my language? Am I speaking in a way that is conducive for success, or do I sound like a humdrum, depressed person that has all this negativity, right? All this stuff matters, right? It's all connected in the way that we feel and how we show up and all this type of stuff. So the takeaway for today, short and sweet, is that your inner narrative, your inner world, is reflecting in your outer world. So whatever your outer results are, think about your income, your relationships, your health. All of these things are directly tied to and connected to the stories that you have in your head. The most precious real estate that you can own is this little small 6 inches between your ears, right? And if we have good things in here, a good narrative, we're going to project that in our outer world. Okay, I know that sounds weird, but just bear with me here. There's power in your stories. All right, and I've touched on this before, but I really want to drive this home because of a coaching call we had last night. I was really hammering this idea that we are where we are because of the stories that we've accepted as truth in our life. And as I get ready to release the book, I have 2 more chapters to finish tightening up. Chapter 1 is all about our stories and how we get these stories and the stories, or the impact that the stories have in our lives. Okay, so for instance, I talk about when you're born, you come out of the womb and you're in the care of someone. Maybe it's a mom, a dad, a grandparent, whatever that is. And those people start to immediately project and instill their belief systems onto you, their stories. Their stories about politics, their stories about health, their stories about how we should think about people that are the same and different than us. How should we look at the race that we are and the different race? How should we look at money? How should we look at all these things, right? And we don't have enough awareness. We don't even know what our body parts are. We don't have any words. We have no language yet. We have the lowest level of awareness possible. So we're just going to accept whatever stories are given to us as truth. Well, the danger of that is those stories might not be serving you, and they might not get you where you want to go in life, right? So it's not until later in life that we have the opportunity to start telling new stories and accepting new stories. Now, the challenge is, though, that many people have never done the work, the inner work. They don't understand the psychology and how all this stuff works. And so they just think that whatever story they created or they adopted back when they were 5, when their mom or dad told them that they weren't good enough to do something, they kept that story and then they kept building evidence for why that's true. And so for me, for instance, grew up in a household full of chaos, mom's struggling with drug addiction, dad's not present, I don't meet him till later. My story was I'm not good enough because my own parents don't even want to be here to be with me, to nurture me, to give me what I need, right? That was a story. Now, later in life, I've created a whole nother level of awareness. I know that wasn't necessarily the case. They had their own drama that they were trying to figure out. They were just trying to navigate life as difficult as it can be sometimes in their own way. So it really had nothing to do with me. It had more to do with them. But I didn't know that at the time. And I've had to reframe that story because if I didn't, it would hold me back in every other area. And it has for a long time until I started to create some awareness. And so I'm having them audit each of these areas of their life, and I'm challenging them to say, hey, like, I know this seems like kind of unnecessary work. Like, when are we going to get to the magic meal plan? When are we going to get to the magic exercise routine? But if we don't understand and we can't be aware of our thoughts and whether or not our thoughts are allowing us to get what we want or holding us back from what we want, like, that's a huge piece of this. And then if we can't understand the impact that our words are having on our results, it's all connected. Getting on a meal plan or an exercise program is not going to last very long if you're constantly talking yourself out of doing it because of the negative thoughts and the stories that we have about why we're not good enough, or we never stick to anything, or we never follow through. If we can't address those stories and reframe those narratives, then we're just going to continue to talk our way into destruction, right? And so I've tried to articulate this message multiple times, and it's very difficult to do, but I'm going to just make it short and sweet today, because I'm telling you, I don't know that there's been anything more transformative in my life than to understand this concept that everything is a story. And if we accept it as truth, we show up accordingly. And we also continue to look for evidence to solidify why it is truth. And what we look for, we find. But the key to this is we have the opportunity and the ability to change that story so that it does serve us. And it looks something like this. We're on the call last night. The gentleman says, hey, I want to share something with you guys. I've really been auditing my words and my thoughts, and I've noticed that I've got a lot of negative self-talk. I've really been being really hard on myself lately about my performance in my new job. I've been at this new job for 2 months, and I just haven't felt like I'm cutting it. I'm not meeting the expectations of the company. So I scheduled a meeting with the manager, and I sat down with him and I said, hey, I just don't feel like I'm cutting it. And the manager goes, man, you've only been here 2 months. You're doing a great job. Just keep it up. His story was that he wasn't enough. He wasn't doing enough. He wasn't meeting the expectations. So his emotion had been all that week: anxiety, depression, helplessness, frustration. You see how it's directly tied. Now, what I challenged him to do was to sit down and adopt the story of the employer and reframe the way he was thinking and write a new story. So the question is, how did that first story make you feel? You're not enough, you're not cutting it, all these things. It's like, well, I feel frustrated, I feel angry, I feel depressed. Okay, great. How did the story that your boss, your employer, your manager, when they told you, no, you are doing a good job, you've only been here a short period of time, give yourself a break? I felt relieved and encouraged and motivated. Okay, cool. So why don't you sit down and build on that story? And so I said, just write it out. Write out things, something like, I've only been here for 2 months and I've already accomplished this. I've already learned that. I've already overcame this. I'm going to be the best employee that this company has ever seen. There are multiple unlimited promotions in my future. That's a different story. Either of them can be true based on what he decides, which one he decides to choose. Because the one that he decides to choose will be the way that he shows up, and the way that he shows up will get him the outcome that he wants to get. And so, guys, the big message here is that we all have stories from our childhood, whether you realize this or not, and most of us don't, that are holding us back. And I really want you to audit those. I want you to sit down and I want you to think, when it comes down to showing up for a particular thing, maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it is the way that you show up for work. Maybe you're thinking about starting a business and you've got all these self-limiting beliefs. I can tell you some of mine. When I started this podcast, I've shared with you guys that, and I still struggle with this daily. Before I sat down to do this episode, I had a bunch of different topics that I wanted to talk about. I've already talked about the stories and how these affect your life. So I was like, that's going to kind of be redundant. But it's been so transformational for me that I had to reframe the whole thing. And I was like, you know what? I can have a scarcity mindset and go, well, they've already heard me talk about this before. It's probably not worth saying again. Or I can go, hey, no. I had to hear this countless times before I really started to understand the power of how my past was showing up and dictating my future, and that if I didn't reframe this, like, it's so powerful that I wrote a book about it. Maybe I should talk about it again. If it's that powerful for me, imagine, and this was the reframe this morning as I was thinking through this topic. I said, at first it was, I've already talked about this, I need to find something more interesting, whatever. And then I went, but what if the people listening to this really got this concept like I'm getting it? It could totally change the entire trajectory of their life. Like, it could cause them to start the business. It could cause them to have the conversation that they've been avoiding forever. That's going to cause their breakthrough. It could cause them to show up in a much more powerful way, more purposefully, more powerfully, and it could change their life. People don't need to be taught. They need to be reminded. I know you guys you already kind of know this, but do you really know it? And for me, for years, I didn't. Like, I heard about, well, you got to go back and deal with your past, and you got to change the stories, and you've got to assign different meanings and all this type of stuff, to those stories. But I really didn't understand it like I understand it now. And now that I'm understanding it at a different level, I have a different level of awareness around it. It's really life-changing for me. And so, guys, my challenge to you would be to think about your thoughts. Think about how you're feeling. Like, audit these things. This is what I'm having my clients do, is audit these things. And then understand that the way that you feel is directly connected to how you think, and how you think is connected to how you speak, and it's all tied together. And if you can start to fix these things, you can move yourself in a different direction, in a more powerful direction. And so it looks something like this. I audit the stories in my brain. What am I telling myself about myself? For me, it's I'm not good enough. I grew up on welfare. I got in trouble with the law. Like, who am I to do anything great, right? So that's a negative story. It's a limiting belief. And then how could we identify the emotions that are coming from that story? So let's say you're going into work and you've got to have a tough conversation with your boss or an employee or whatever, coworker, and you've got all this anxiety around it. You're like, oh, I don't want to have this conversation. It's going to result in this, and they're going to get mad, and they're going to get offended, and they're going to blow up, and I'm going to have to leave, and all these things. Audit that and how it's making you feel. Anxious, afraid, angry. And then I want you to write a new story. And the beautiful thing is you're the author. You get to write whatever you want. Instead, maybe adopt a story that says, hey, I'm going to go into this conversation open and with a heart to make a connection and to tell them how I feel in a positive way. And they're going to be receptive, and they're going to appreciate me for bringing this to the table. And it's going to allow us to get some of this negativity out of the way so that we can build a better connection, so that we can have a better work relationship, so that we can start having more meaningful conversations and move things along in a more powerful way. Like, that's a new story. And I want you to adopt that and then think about, how does that story make you feel? Hopeful, happy, encouraged? And guys, do you think that when you feel happy, hopeful, and encouraged, you're going to show up differently and take different actions than if you felt angry and depressed and fearful? Of course. So that's the key, right? Like, that is it. If I can change the stories and I can change my language, then I can change how I feel. And if I can change how I feel, that's where motivation comes from. That's where inspiration comes from. It's also where depression comes from. So, super powerful, guys. Like, I'm going to learn a way to articulate this more clearly. This is very hard for me to take what's in my brain and give it to you, and the power of this. But there's so many stories that are just looping over and over and over, and you don't even realize it. But what we focus on, by continuing to let those stories go, and we focus on those things, we start to get evidence of more of that, right? And then it more deeply solidifies that story until we disrupt it. We've got to disrupt it by reframing it, identifying that it's a story and it's limiting, reframing it with a new story, and then looking for evidence to support the new story. And this is actually something, your brain has something called the reticular activating system, and it works exactly like that. Whatever you put in front of it and focus on, it's going to show you more of that. If you put negativity in front of it, you're going to get more negativity. If you put positivity in front of it, it's going to look for more positivity, right? Just the way that it works. So it's like when you go to a car lot and you've been Googling this car and you just love this car and it's the only one in this color and this model, and you go up to the car lot and you buy it, and then that same week you see 3 more just like it. Well, they've always been there. You just haven't noticed them. But because you're now focused on that, your reticular activating system allows you to sort through all of the other info that's coming into your brain every single day, and it lets those things through. It lets you see that car at the red light across the street, 3 streets over, whatever, and all of a sudden you spot it. Because we have information constantly coming into our brain. We can only absorb or pay attention to so much of it, acknowledge so much of it. So that's the key for having or understanding your reticular activating system, that whatever you put in front of it, whatever you focus on, you get more of the same. So guys, if you give your brain more positive stories, it's going to create more positive outcomes. You're going to show up in a more positive way. So guys, that's it for today. I want to audit your stories, audit your feelings, audit your words. Let's make sure that they are conducive for our future self, who we want to be, who we're striving to be. And I want to say, guys, if you've got something pulling on your heart, that you just feel like there's got to be more to life, that you're just supposed to be doing more and bigger things, whatever that looks like for you, understand that what's holding you back, that's in your heart, that's who you are. That's who you're supposed to be. God gave you those desires. There's only one of you. You have unique gifts and talents inside of you. And if you have desires, they're probably in line with those unique gifts and talents. But there's a disconnect between here, your heart, and here, your brain. Your brain is talking you out of doing all the things that your heart is yearning for. And until we get alignment between the mind and the heart, we're going to continually be disconnected and frustrated. And the way you find that alignment is by reframing to be more in line with your heart. If I feel like I'm supposed to be a communicator, but in my brain I'm going, yeah, but Jay, you don't even have an education. You don't have a very big vocabulary. How are you ever you think I'm ever going to go out and communicate? Of course not. But if I change the story and I go, hey man, like you're the negative thing that happened in your life is actually the gift. Your story is actually your gift. Your pain and suffering is actually your gift. It's the reason why people will listen to you in spite of you not having a great vocabulary. People will listen to you over someone that has a PhD and has all the big fancy words because you have a story that is a gift that you suffered through, that's going to be the very thing that connects you to this audience. You're going to have a tune that only they'll connect with because of the very thing that I used to use as the reason not to speak. Does this make sense? So the story can be, hey, I don't have a very big vocabulary, I don't have a big education, I didn't make it through school, oh, so I shouldn't speak. Or it could be, hey, because I don't have a big vocabulary, because I didn't make it through school, but because I have a unique story and a gift and a passion inside, I need to go tell it. Now all of a sudden, I take different actions, right? So I hope you guys can see there's so much power in this. And this is something that actually I work with a group of guys on, and we do this on a regular basis. Every single week, we talk about our stories. I'm in a mastermind group, and we have conversations, and we go through a process called stacking. And I've shared this with you guys before about, each day we write out how we're feeling. And then we go, okay, well, if we're feeling this way, what's the story we're telling ourselves to make us feel that way? And then what's a new story that we're going to adopt today to change our state? Because if you can change your state, you can change your life. And your state just being the way that you feel. And you can, on demand, anytime, change your state. If you're pissed off about something, I promise you, if you will sit down, think about something that's really positive in your life, and start to recite words and use your body in a positive way, smile, that creates a neurological change inside of your brain that makes you feel more happy. Just by smiling. Just literally smile and you'll be happier. Say things like, I am happy, I am excited, I have so much to be grateful for. If you do this in the middle of a, tantrum, so to speak, if you're in a bad mood and you're like, just nothing's going my way, and you shift gears and you go, no, look at all the things that I have to be grateful for. Look at my family, look at my career, look at my health, look at all of these things. I am blessed, I am highly favored, I have so much to be grateful for, I am happy, and you smile. Guess what? Your entire state will change. Bam, like that. Powerful, guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope I did a decent job of articulating something that I've been talking about over and over and over and over again. It's very hard to put into words because I understand the power of this, and I know that if you guys will get this, it'll change everything for you. So I appreciate you listening, guys. We're working our way towards 100 episodes. That's been a big goal of mine, is can I get 100 episodes of the Conquer Me podcast? The book's about to come out. I got 2 more chapters, and then I'm also creating a keynote around that book. It's nerve-wracking. I'm working on it. It's a lot to sort through, but I'm really excited to deliver that for the very first time in July in Boca Raton to a group of folks there. I just appreciate the support, guys. I have continued to practice what I'm preaching to you guys right now on a daily basis to get any amount of traction that I have in my life today. And you can do the same thing. If you're not happy with where you're at, you can start to challenge your stories. There's nothing more disappointing to me than to walk around every single day and see all these people settling for less because they just haven't taken the time to challenge the stories. They're working in jobs that they hate. They're doing things that they don't enjoy. And I'm looking at these people and I'm like, man, you could do so much more. Like, you already have the talent right now to do and be more, but they're totally unaware. Stories. Someone sold them a lie. And I promise you, no matter who you are, how successful you are listening to this, you have stories that are keeping you from going to the next level. I would be willing to bet the farm on that. And if you can sit down and evaluate that, I believe that we can go to the next level. So guys, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it, like it, subscribe to it, give it a 5-star review, do all those things. It helps me get the word out. I really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.